Hello, good afternoon. Dr. Sakti Misra ma'am, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir, you are audible to me.
Okay. So, dear participants, good afternoon all. Welcome to the second session of day 4. We are going to begin the second section with the presenter, Dr. Sakti Misra ma'am. She is Associate Professor in Computer Engineering Department of Pandit Deen Dayal Energy University, formerly known as PDPU. She is having vast teaching experience and she is having many publications in good journal and conferences. She also received Best Paper Publication Award too. So we are really having a great opportunity to learn concept of model creation, fit model and data validation from such an eminent personality. So without wasting any precious moment, I am directly handing over to Dr. Sakti Misra ma'am. Please ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a nice introduction. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. I think it is going to be a good session. I will try my best to keep it, though I know that this time is overlapping with your lunch time and you must be feeling hungry. So I never mind if you can keep a bowl of snack across with you and you can keep on eating also and you can learn also. Okay, so with this, I would like to start my presentation. See, it's a joint presentation actually, which I have kept in the mixed mode. The few of the codes are there available on my Google Colab just for the demonstration purpose. And then there is, yeah, obviously the slides are there. One thing I would like, I don't know how much the time will permit me, but I will certainly try my best to keep it very interactive. And I request everyone to please keep your questions with you. And once we will land to the QA session, I will be very happy to answer your queries. And if there are some questions which are still in the question mark category, I would definitely get you back with right answers to them. So with this, sir, can you confirm if you can see the presentation?
Yes, correct. Yes, ma'am. It is clearly visible. Just make it in a slide, so ma'am, please.
Now it is okay.
Yes, ma'am. It is okay now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the topic first I would tell you that the topic itself, the model creation, model fit and data validation, the three things itself is they are very vast and we can talk about them approximately for a day. We can spend a day on all these three. Model creation is actually what I wanted to cover, that linear regression, data decision tree, but I'm sure that you would have already covered these topics in some days of these FTP, right? So model creation, like applying the data set, looking at the data set and then applying your machine learning concept or algorithm over to it and then creating your model. Okay, but the creation of model or the model which you are going to create, it's not the only thing. You have to evaluate your model. You have to compare your model with other models because a similar problem may be solved by number of different algorithms, right? So our objective is to pick up the best model. When I'm saying the best model, what are the criteria for keeping the model as the best model? That is one parameter or one part of this particular session. Another comes as model fit. Now, this is a very important concept because when we are trying to create a model, we should know whether our model is a good model or it is a bad model. It is something like if you are going to write something or if you're going to create a paper, research paper, mostly I would assume that most of you are faculty from different colleges or probably research scholars. Possibly you are going to write a paper. Now you have written a paper which you think it's very good, but it could be not as per the standards of a particular conference or possibly a journal. So how will you, so this is a question mark. Now who will declare that? Who will decide that the model is good, model is bad or model is average? That comes into model fit. And finally, we will land to the data validation part. Now data validation is very important. The entire machine learning, okay, irrespective of whatever you take it supervised, you take it unsupervised, the entire machine learning works on the quality of the data set what you are having. Now keeping these three things in our mind, let me see what I have for you. So in model creation, we have data exploration, how to explore the data, how to analyze the data. Okay. I will show you these few things I have kept ready for the demonstration purpose in my Colab book, and I will certainly show you with a very simple example so that you can understand. Now comes the very important part, like there is a data set. I am pretty sure that you would have come across some kind of data set on Kaggle or possibly UCI machine learning repository, which is the largest repository of data sets across the globe. So when you look at the data, so there is a CSV file or there is a TXT file which you are going to download on your system. Now look at that file. Once you look at the file, okay, once you look at the file, what do you see? You see some numbers, you see some text, you see some comma values, right? Or you see some tab values, okay? Now this exploration you have to do, okay? What is the shape of my data? How many features I do have in my data set? So that comes in the part of data exploring and analysis. So data exploration itself is very wide. There are a number of methods for doing it. Okay, possibly we may not cover all of them here, but we can certainly look upon some of these things. Then we come across the data preparation and transformation. Now data transformation, why data transformation is so important? Okay, so there are data sets or possibly you come across a problem where you have found out a data which has large number of dimensions. When I'm saying large number of dimensions, what do you understand by it? When I'm saying large number of dimensions, possibly I want to say that there are a number of features. All of them may or may not be important for you to learn. Okay. Now, what are important and what are not important? How should we understand that thing? What is important and what is not important? So that gives us another chance to look upon how to prepare the data. Sometimes suppose there is a sensor in my room. Okay, for some time it is out of battery. It is out of battery. So what will you do? The sensor will not record any data for that particular period. Now, when you will create this data set where the sensor is recording some values, for the period, possibly it is a few minutes time or possibly it's few seconds time. But what do you see in your record? What do you see in your sheet? There are any values? There are absolutely no values. When there are no values and you are going to create a model using that particular parameter, how will you decide upon that? What was the temperature at this particular moment? How can you decide it? So that's another problem. So we have to prepare our data. We have to handle such kind of things. We have to clean our data. We have to look upon the values which are either missing or ambiguous values are there. Possibly there is a component fault in a device or component fault in a sensor. What will happen? You are continuously monitoring a room temperature which is between the range of 24, suppose let's say 24 degrees Celsius to 28 degrees Celsius, and all of a sudden it is showing 50 degrees Celsius. What will happen? So it's an ambiguous data. It's the data which should not be considered. So there might be many values like that, right? So whether it is coming because of some fault or something, we have to prepare our data accordingly. Now the third part, the important part here comes the transformation. Why do we need to transform the data? Exactly, right? Why do you need to transform the data? You have been, suppose you're going to buy a house. I am going to take very simple examples which can give you the overall understanding of the concept. So you are going to buy a house, and in that house you are going to look upon a particular area or possibly number of bedrooms, or possibly it is next to the road, or it is facing east facing, south facing, or north facing, whatever it is. Okay. Now, when there are lots of features, inclusion of all the features into a model cannot happen. Okay. Because it will become a very complex model, and very complex model generate what kind of errors that we will see in the later part of the slide. Okay. So we have to transform the data. Okay, we need to transform. So like length is given, plot length is given, breadth is given. Possibly we are not interested in identifying the length of the plot or the breadth of the plot, but we are more interested in what is the area of the plot. So instead of given these three, length is what is the length, what is the breadth, let me take only area. Now I can remove these two features, length and breadth, but I have created a new attribute out of these two features, length and breadth, that is an area. Okay, so that's how we can transform the data also. Particular values can be transformed. So these are very wide and very vast topics which can be, there are number of techniques involved. Okay, the entire principal component analysis, okay, factor analysis, linear discriminant analysis. There are number of methods which where we talk about the transformation, data transformation and data preparation. Similarly, we have number of methods of data exploration also. So yes, it is not possible to cover all of them here, but yes, that will give us at least some view that yes, we need to do something with the data so that it can be made suitable for the creation of a model. Now, your data is ready. Let's say you have prepared your data. Now your data doesn't have any missing value. It doesn't have any ambiguous value, and you have only features with you which you want to use in your model. Okay. Okay. Now comes the part model training. Okay, how will you, this is not you, see, our human brain is very intelligent. What does it do? You look upon a particular image and you immediately identify that yes, it is my relative, or that is a person you know or you do not know. Okay, let me ask a very simple thing. If somebody give you image of your own mother or brother or father, how much time would you require to recognize them? It may sound a very silly question, but it's very important question to understand the difference between the human learning and the machine learning. Okay, why it is important? No matter how many times you have seen a person, the time required to recognize your own sibling or your own parents would take very less time. Possibly it cannot be calculated. Okay, it's very less time. But a machine, irrespective of whether you are sitting in front of it every day and night, but if it will see your image, it will take its own course of time to identify that this person belongs to XYZ. Right? So training is very important part. No matter, because why have you recognized your mother and father so fast, and why machine can't do it that fast? You know why? Because of the training. The training you are getting since you were born till this age, you have been trained. Your mind has been trained so many times that you can immediately identify it. Machine cannot, because machine has not been trained that much time. If you train your machine that much time, it will also recognize. So training becomes a very important part. Model can give accurate results, precise results. It depends how it has been trained for that. Then comes a part, important part again here, hyperparameter tuning. See, I have written here, but in my slide, I have not included anything related to
Excuse me, ma'am,
hyperparameter.
for the
Why?
interruption. Hello.
Pardon,
Excuse me.
please? Yes.
Excuse me for the interruption. Ma'am, if it is not necessary, can you please switch off your video so to minimize
Okay.
bandwidth requirement so
Okay,
participants
sure.
can hear your voice and presentation very clearly, ma'am. If it
Sure,
is
sure.
necessary, then you may go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So
Okay, thank you,
is
ma'am.
it okay now?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay. So now we will talk about the hyperparameter tuning. So what is a hyperparameter? Okay. There are no hyperparameters I have included in the slide, as I have told you already. But let's try to understand what are these hyperparameters. See, when there are number of features or number of attributes, there are few attributes which are more deciding, and there are other attributes which are less deciding. So let's take an example of the same house selection. Suppose you are going to buy your own house, and let's try to understand this. So somebody says that you have, for you, what is important? For you, it is important that the house should be east facing or north facing. Okay. So that carries some value, that carries some weight. For some people, say, let's say I want to go for a house which is, suppose, let's say 1500 square feet, or let's say 2000 square feet. For some people, it is more important to have a small house, but a garden also. So for everyone, the parameter, these parameters, the features, they differ from one to another. Now, how will you decide upon this thing, which is what is important and what is not important? So what we say, usually we keep a value, let's say alpha. Okay, usually we decide upon some kind of weight, you say W, or some kind of learning rate, how your model should learn. Okay, how your model should learn. So suppose in the case of features, what we say, let's say area is very important. So let's assign bigger value to the area, heavy weight or more weight to the area of the plot. Let's give lesser value to the, let's say it is W1. Next, let's take it is W2. W2, it is more deciding factor whether the particular house is Vastu compliant or not compliant. Let's take an example for somebody it may be important. Okay, so we can assign a W2 which is lesser than from W1. So weight is reduced. But there are other factors. Possibly it is not important at all that there is a pole in front of the house, or there is a tree in front of the house, or there is a well inside the house. They may or may not be deciding factor, so we can just discard them. Okay, so we assign a negligible value, almost you say 0.01 or 0.02 or something related to that. So it means it is not that important. Similarly, when your model is being trained, you have been you are also looking upon how much should you learn from the model. Okay, how much should you learn from the model? So again, I will give you a very simple example. All of you would have learned alphabets. Okay, alphabets in when you were in a nursery or possibly UKG, LKG, you have learned. Now that has become you have learned it, then gradually you started making words, then you gradually started making sentences, then you started writing comprehensions, from comprehensions to papers, technical documents, articles, right? So when did you learn ABCD? Far away. But still, that rate of learning is increasing gradually because it depends on that. Somebody cannot start writing or reading all of a sudden because they do not have any information how to write a particular. If I ask you, somebody might be knowing. But if I give you some other language and I ask you, okay, can you read it? You cannot read it because that word you have not known. You do not know that particular language, the basic alphabets. So that's why the learning rate is also important, whether how we have to, settle it. So hyperparameters, so there are a number of, like if you talk about deep neural networks, there are a number of epochs, there are a number of iterations, number of layers. There are many things, but I have excluded that part from this particular presentation. And finally, on what basis we should evaluate our models and validation. I plan to do the hands-on on linear regression decision tree, but I think the time, I am doubtful if the time will permit me. Okay. All these things we will go one by one, how to fit the model and what are the important parameters in model fitting, and then how to do the data validation. So the software or tools required, computer science a wonderful branch, and for especially for machine learning, you do not need to have lots of things and lots of space. You just need your machine with the Jupyter Notebook installed in it, or RStudio if somebody is interested. Okay. So for data exploration and analysis, I have put up the IRIS dataset, which is very common, very simple dataset, and there are 150 instances included. And I'm pretty sure that most of you would have worked with that dataset. So we will see, or if you have not done it, that's also okay. Towards the end of the presentation, I will go to that part. Okay, so remember, when we will be creating the model, we have to understand 5 important points. You have to understand the data set. We have to select primary feature selection. In IRIS dataset, there are only 4 features, and all these 4 features are important for us. So we are not excluding any of the feature. But if you have a time and if you can look upon the Boston housing dataset on the Kaggle or from the UCI machine learning repository, you will find out that this particular dataset, Boston housing dataset, has more than 150 features. And when you will be creating a model, obviously you are not going to use all 150. You have to select, but which feature has to be selected and which feature has to be discarded, that we have to see. So for that, we have the correlation matrices, which they can tell you that what important features are there and how 2 or more features are correlated with each other. Then we have to look upon the transformation of the data, training the model, and using the model. Okay, so how to prepare your data? It's all very simple, because it's all one by one step, which can be better shown on the Google Colab rather than going by the slides. How to collect the data, identify the features, what are your labels or classes, what are the sampling strategy, that is a splitting strategy. Okay, and finally, how you are splitting the data into the test, training, and test. Okay, now let me come to a bit mathematical part, if all of you are okay. See, there is a term which is known as hypothesis, okay, which is considered as H. Now, this hypothesis is a set of multiple hypotheses which can be written using the data set which is given to you. So, suppose there are k instances, so we can simply write H k hypothesis. Okay, k hypothesis. Each of these hypotheses is defining or it's predicting a particular class label. Okay, so what is H1? Suppose in the say I say that if it is raining and if it is raining and the humidity is high, uh, it's not going to be I am not going to play outside. Let's take an example. Okay, simple example. So that is one hypothesis. The another one, I can put up a hypothesis H2, like if it is too sunny and the temperature is more than 47 degrees Celsius, I will not go to play. That is also our hypothesis. See, remember, in both the cases, I am not going to play outside. I'm not going to play outside, but the hypotheses are different. Hypothesis 1 says that if it is raining, I am not going to play outside. But hypothesis 2 says if the temperature is too high, I am not going to play outside. In both the cases, my class label is negative. Okay. Okay. Now, my hypothesis space capital H is actually the combination, or you can say it is a set of all the possible hypotheses from that particular data set. Okay. Now, when the model fails when it is not able to generalize to the unseen data. Means between H1 to HK, it can always give you accuracy high because it has seen this data. Now suppose I am going to add one hypothesis HK plus 1. Okay. If I am going to add one more hypothesis HK plus 1 to H, if my model can give me right answer to this, okay, if it can achieve some sort of accuracy on this hypothesis, my model is good or my model is successful. But if it fails to generalize, what is generalize? See, H1, only for H1 it will always work. Whenever it will rain, I will not go outside. That is very specific hypothesis. If the temperature is more than 47 degree, very specific hypothesis, it will not generalize. And henceforth, obviously, it is going to always give you the right answer. So they are specific hypotheses. Now, ultimately in machine learning, we do not rely on the specific hypothesis. We have to make the generalized model which can cover almost all the possible training test data instances. And henceforth, we have to make sure that our model should be successful in identifying or in generalizing on the unseen data. So HK plus 1 is my unseen data that was not part of my actual data set. So if I can make number of models, okay, suppose I have created M1 model, suppose I have created machine learning 1 model using my decision tree. Suppose it's a classification problem, I'm doing it M1. Okay, then I have used M2 also. Suppose I have used KNN classification. I have used M2 model. Then again I am doing M3 model. So different techniques have given me some M1, M2, M3 model. Now how will I find out that which model is best? The only model is best which is giving me the lowest generalization error. Okay, suppose it is giving me the accuracy of 76, 85 and it is 97. So this is the generalization error is least here, henceforth M3 is going to be my successful model. How will you make your hypothesis evaluation? Okay, good. Now all of you can see on the slide, their size is given. The size is of the house. Actually, it is from housing data set. And this side on the y-axis, you can see the price in the dollars for a particular house. Okay, you can see 4 training instances which have been given on your screen. You can all of you can see it. Now, I would be very happy if you can write in your chat box which hypothesis is good. This is, let's say, this is my A hypothesis. This is my B hypothesis. And this is my C hypothesis. So usually the price prediction is done using the linear regression because it is the continuous data. So I cannot go ahead with the classification kind of thing. So this is a regression. So which one do you see? It's very good. This is very good. This is very good, or this is very good. So looks like this is very good. Okay, this is very good. Suppose I have one more data point, and because why this is not good? What is my error? My error is my difference between the actual and the predicted. What is predicted? Predicted is the point which is lying on your this line. Okay, what is this line? This is my regression line. So the data point is actually plotted here, but I have plotted here. So what is the difference? Let me see. The perpendicular distance between these 2 points is considered as your generalization error. Let's say it is epsilon. Okay, so this is my error. It is positive. It can be positive and negative in both the directions. So this is my positive error and this is my negative error because the actual point is below the regression line. And this point, if you see, it is above the regression line. So this is my error. In this case, I can find out that this one plus this one plus this one plus this one. It will give me some error component. What about this one? Let's try to see this one. So the actual data point is here, but actually I have to, it has to be somewhere on the line, regression curve. It is a curve, not a line. So let me take example again. Let me just calculate the distance between these data point and the point on the curve itself. And possibly if I am finding out my error here is something like 9.5 or something, I'm here getting it 1.2 or possibly 0.9. That's okay with me. Now look upon this particular curve, how beautiful it is looking. Why it is looking beautiful? Because all the points exactly map to the regression curve. It's too good. Means whatever we have assumed and whatever we have predicted and what was actually there, both things are absolutely mapping. So it means this is my best hypothesis. This is my best hypothesis. Let's try to see that. What we have done, we have made a very simple model. The regression line always be drawn in the case of the line equation. What is the line equation? Y is equals to mx plus c. It is a simple linear regression model, which is taking one parameter, theta naught. Theta naught is my bias and theta 1 is my weight. Okay, for the attribute x. I have picked up just one attribute x and I have given one weight, theta 1 weight to it. And if I'm seeing here, it is going to be too far away from my actual prediction. The prediction is going too far away from the actual data point. So possibly if I will generalize, it will reach it. See, this point is coming here. The line is going up somewhere. The line is going up somewhere here. So if my next point will come here, see, the error will keep on increasing. Okay, it might come here also. It might come on the line also. But looking upon these 4 points, I can obviously say that there is lots of error is there. Generalization error is high. Okay, now look upon this third one. What we have thought of that it is very good. There is absolutely zero error, zero generalization error. Why zero? Because all the points predicted and actual are having no changes. So I have written a multilinear regression equation here for this. What it is doing, I am sure in linear regression topic, you would have seen this particular equation, kind of equation, where the certain polynomials of attribute have been assigned different weight, like theta 2, theta 3, theta 4. It is too good to adopt. Why? If the next time, because possibly if there is a training error, this model is considering the training error also as a part of model. So in future, suppose there is a error in the model, error in the training, it will adapt to that also. And that will lead to the wrong model. So this is my overfit model because it is too good to set, or to, you can say, to select. Now here slightly it is mapping, but it is not mapping completely. Okay, the error is less but not null. If it is completely null, it means it is overfit. Okay, if it is too much, it is underfit. It is just in between. So it is a right model for it. Okay, I'll come to more examples on this. Now, this is just one. You see here, we have just considered the one attribute here, that is X, that is price. Okay, sorry, size. This is my Y and this is my X. So the size of the house, one attribute has been selected or dimension has been selected here. But if your feature dimensions are too high, so I have size also, I have other parameter, how many BHKs, it is independent house, it is villa or whatever it is. Okay, so there are many parameters, but then how you are going to evaluate your hypothesis? Obviously, you will have to make a more complex model if the feature dimensions are going to be high. Okay, so if your model does not generalize to the unseen data, means it is not able to predict the things that are in the training sample, you have to split the data. You have to make fold of it. I will come to this part in the last component or last part of this particular presentation. Okay, so first of all, what we have learned, let's quickly summarize. We have to look upon the model which has a lower generalization error. We have talked about the error, how to predict the error or how to evaluate the error, the difference between the actual and the predicted. Okay, and if you want to evaluate the generalization error, how much it is, okay, then you have to split the data into train, validation and test set. Now remember, there are three things. Usually we just talk about two things, training set and test set. We don't talk about validation set, but in actuals we should have the train validation. Actually validation is a part of test only. Okay, so usually the right number of training, validation and test is considered as 80-10-10, but you can keep it 60-20-20 also. That's also okay. So let's come to the mathematical part of it. How to calculate the training error. So remember the training error J theta. J theta is a cost function. Okay, J theta is a cost function which is telling you the difference between the hypothesis H theta and the actual label Y. This is my actual, this is my predicted. The difference between these two, taking a square of it, okay, then doing the summation of it and dividing it by 1/2m. The whole proof is there. Okay, how y 1/2m. But okay, let's not try to focus upon that thing. Our objective is to find out how to find out the training error. So the training error is the error, the difference between the hypothesis, what you are why it's what the actual class label is there, and actual class label is there, and the hypothesis, what hypothesis is giving to you. Okay, similarly for the validation error also you have to look upon this, and for the test set also you have to look upon the same formula you have to use. Okay, so this is on the basis of training error, validation error and test error, you can select the appropriate machine learning model. So what is you will select, you will train on the training set, you will calculate the validation error, you will pick up the best model, and finally you will evaluate the test error. Okay, this is a simple thing, theoretical things about the model creation. Okay, now let me come to a very important concept here. This is quite simple. Okay, 1 by 1 line in Python and you can get your model, because already everything is inbuilt, libraries and functions are there. Now I'm going to talk about a very important concept here, which is related with your data values, okay, and your model. The concept of bias and variance. What is a bias and what is a variance? Now, bias is just now what we have discussed, the difference between the actuals and the predicted. That is a bias. What is a variance? Variance is something where you should talk about what is the variance in your data, means how much data you are considering for making the model. So what is the variance? Variance is too less, too high. If it is too high, it means you are considering noise data also. You possibly there are some anomalies also, and you are considering that also. So high variance, high bias. Low bias means low error. Low variance means the variety of data, or you can say the expansion of data is also not that much. Okay, we have the proper metric for evaluating the bias and variance in the data. And you will be very surprised to see these are the two parameters which actually affect the accuracy of the model. Okay, like when we say you have devised one model, I have devised one model, whose model is good? So how will you compare? Just looking at the error. If you look at the error, possibly you can tell my error is only 30%. I will say my error is also 31%. Okay, your model is good. Okay, no, that is not a case. You have to look upon the other mathematical parameters which are important in computing the models. Okay, now let's talk about the low bias and high bias. This metric you can see, I think, okay, and we can make it. Let's try to make it. Okay. Low bias. Okay, low bias means, see, your data is, the actual is here, and your the blue points what you are going to see here. Okay, this is side your bias is there, this side your variance is there. Okay, this is also low and high. This side variance. So now you see here, low bias, error is also less. Okay, error is less. The red and blue are mapping to each other, means low bias, error is very less. Okay, high bias. High bias means almost all the predicted values are far away from the actuals. So high bias. Okay. Now, when we talk about the variance in the data, we need to look upon the variance is too much. The data is scattered around everywhere. Okay. And the generalized error should be the average error. Generalized error means, see, all of them are not exactly overlapping with the actuals, but they are near to the actuals. Okay, so variance means data is, the data variety is also high. Variety of data, or you can say the type of, or the spread of data is high. Okay, and if you see here again, यहाँ पे, in this particular point, this part, if you look upon, you can find out the variance is also high and the bias is also high. Why bias is high? Because all the predicted points are far away from the actual data. Okay, actual class labels. So variance, we have taken a spread of the data that is high. It means the variance is high, but the distance between the actual and the predicted is also very high. So high bias, high variance. Okay, low variance, see, the almost all the data groups, data set, data points are similar to each other, but bias is high because all of them are far away from the predicted results. So it is my low variance, high bias. Now let's talk about this part. What is this? This is my low bias. Low bias, why low bias? Because there are few data points which are far away, but there are points which are close to the predicted one. So this is my low bias, but high variance. You see, the data variance is from here till here. So this much data we are having. And low bias and low variance, uh, it is something like you have selected a number between 1 to 10. Okay, and you are going to just perform all the particular addition, subtraction in that closed group only. So obviously, if your number set is very limited, you will never be able to check out whether your program is giving the right answer or wrong answer, because it will always give you the range within that particular value. Okay, so this is my low bias and my low variance. So why bias and variance are so important? Do they have any parameter? Again, look upon the same diagram what we have taken just now considered. Okay, so the bias variance trade-off says that, now we have talked about the generalization error. Here we will talk about the bias and variance. So what is a bias here? The bias is high here. Okay, bias is high means the distance between the actual and the predicted is high. So bias is high. That's why it is underfit. Remember, whenever the bias will be high, okay, your model will be underfit model. Now look upon this particular third image. Here bias is low, but the variance is high. Okay, bias is low because bias is almost zero, but variance is high means all the data points have been considered or have been plotted onto the predicted line. So that's why it is a high variance. This is also, so whenever the variance will be too high and bias will be very low, we have to look upon the the model will go or model will suffer from the overfitting. So we have to trade off between the bias and the variance, and we have to find out a model which can be a good fitted model for our problem. Okay. So see, this is too simple model. This is too complex model. Too simple, just considering two parameters, two instances are close to two instances, nothing else. Too complex. All the points have been plotted on the graph. Okay, so the high bias and the high variance, and it is just right. So why underfitting and overfitting is so important? Okay, underfitting happens when a model can't accurately capture the dependencies among the data. Okay, so it is too simple to understand. Okay, fine, just one parameter, that's it, or two parameters, that's it. Okay, overfitting means all the features have been considered. A model is going to learn from all the features, but we should understand that all the features are not important for any problem. Okay, we have to identify few features which are important, and then there might be technical computational error in the data. So model should not learn from those kind of errors. Otherwise, it will always be a wrong model. So any complex model may suffer from overfitting. Okay, another example you can see here. Too simple. Okay, high bias. Okay, look upon here. Too complex. Why too complex? Too good, right? Too good. All the points are predicted on the line. Okay, so possibly this is going to be my another. Here you can see here what is degree 1, the linear relationship in regression equation. It is a linear relationship. Degree 2, quadratic equation. Degree 3, cubic equation, and degree 5, polynomial equation of degree 5. Okay, and these 5 equations have been written here, and they have given you different models. Now it's up to you which model should be a good model and which model should be a bad model. So here obviously you can see the error between the predicted and the actual is too high to understand. Okay, so it is my underfit model. Here all the data points are possibly on the line, and possibly it is considering some sort of anomaly also it is being considered. So it is my overfit model. Now between degree 2 and degree 3, okay, which model is a good model and which model is a best model? So you have to compare between these two. So you will find out that this model is having a less generalization error than this model, and henceforth this is going to be my good fitted model. This is going to be the cubic equation one is going to be my good fitted model, because when we ultimately every time we have to look upon the bias and variance in the data before making the predictions whether it is a good or it is a bad model. And this is also going with the underfit. Okay, so this is all about the fitting of the model. Okay, now suppose
Madam,
we have done this thing. Okay,
Madam,
now we know. Yes.
Madam, request to explain that overfitting and underfitting, that theoretical aspect once again, madam, please.
Okay. This one.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. See, underfitting occurs when we are considering a very simple model. Let's try to say there are x1, x2, x3 number of parameters. Okay. Underfitting will always occur when we do not consider enough number of features in the model. So we are considering see this kind of graph which is plotted like this. When we are considering when you will get a line, or in any other model, KNN also, any model can suffer from when we are taking very few parameters into the consideration or attribute in the consideration, our model obviously will be a simple model. A simple model will always lead you towards the more error or more generalization error. Okay, because we think of it can be understood by the simple example again. Suppose somebody given you one problem to work upon. Okay, let's take a simple example, addition or subtraction. Now most of the time what we have seen, people simply add the parameters. Okay, add the parameters. Now we have to understand, see, addition and integration. addition and integration both are combining the values, but both are different. Okay, one might be think of as a complex procedure, and then there are a number of parameters within the range and all those things. It is like this only. When we are considering our model is a very simple model, and we are considering very lesser number of attribute, it will suffer from the underfitting. So it is a low R square. R square is your mean square error. Okay, so it often yields a low R square with known data. So sorry, R is your coefficient of determination here, with known data and bad generalization capabilities, because when you will bring new data into the picture, when will you bring the new data into picture, features might have different values, and that time it will fail. It will fail to realize that what features are important, because it has considered only few features. It has not considered maximum features. Now let's talk about the overfitting. When a model learns both dependencies among data and random fluctuations. Now sometime while what happen, a device may give or any data set might have values which are not actual real values, or possibly these values are not going to be your they are just random values. Okay, or there is a noise in the data. Now here I am writing 3.5. Okay, let's take some value. It is 3.5. Another time let me write 100.5. Okay, then I'm writing 3.1, 3.9. Now, when you look upon these particular data values, you will immediately realize how this 100.5 has come into picture. Okay, now let me plot a graph. If I'm going to plot a graph, I will make my plot 3.1, 3.5, but I'm considering 100.5 also, because I am considering all the features. Now, what is this? This is my noise. I should not have considered this point, but I have considered it. Now my model is almost covering all the points. It has not put up this thing that this data point or this value could be wrong. Instead of this, if I have put up a generalized model like this, this could have been a better model to understand. Anytime we have to look for the generalization model. There is no model which is 100% perfect, but we have to look for the generalized model which can cover many instances which are unseen or which are unobserved by the data set. So means if the data set, if my model is completely as per my data set, obviously if the generalized any unseen data will come, it will fail. It will fail because it has learned from all the dependencies between the values presented in the data set, but it has not learned anything to generalize upon. It is something like if you are very much prone to a particular condition or to a weather or sitting in a particular place. Okay. And then you cannot work because if the table is like that, if the table is oval shape, or if the temperature is too high, you are not fitting yourself. Why? Because you have accustomed yourself to very, very specific conditions. That's what the same condition occur in the machine learning models too. Because with all the dependencies, model is learning that way only. So it will not generalize to the general data or general unseen data. Underfitting, anywhere. We are okay with anywhere. Anywhere we can fit, anywhere we can work upon. We think like that. We are very simple. In a highly sophisticated model or in a very low condition model, again that problem will come. We will not fit upon. So just like an analogy between the machine learning model and the human behavior, which is quite similar. So we have to look upon something in between these two, where the model should understand or model should learn from the dependency. Okay, learn from the dependency, but not with the random fluctuations and not considering all the attributes. Okay, I hope this is clear now. If it is
Yes,
not, let
yes.
me know, please.
No, yes. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Okay, so let's move to the part. Suppose now model is overfitting, underfitting, you know, it is very simple. Generalization error is too high. It means your model is wrong. It's a bad model. We never say the model is wrong. We say model is a bad model, or it's a good model, or it's an excellent model. It's an excellent modeling. Like in COVID-19 also, you would have seen that lots of people have predicted that how many cases will be surged up in nearby months. And some models were like, okay, it will be 0 cases. Some people say that it will be more than 10 million cases. And some people said that no, it will be approximate between this value and this value. And that has become true also. So you said, though, see, no, that was not right. That was not right. This is right, because they have predicted almost every day 45,000 cases will come, and we have seen there are 43,875 cases per day now. So that means model which have predicted 45,000 per day was very close to the actuals one. So nobody likes to have the underfit model because it contains lots of error. Good fit is difficult to determine, because usually we perform machine learning when we do not know the results. Now comes the overfitting. Okay, so overfitting, how to reduce it? Overfitting, you have considered almost all the data which was available with you, considering all the features. But when the overfitting is occurring, how do you know it's an anomaly? You do not know it. You see, in a particular day, there are 56,000 cases of COVID came, suppose, let's take an example. And soon after, very subsequent days, all the days, 12,000, 12,000, 13,000, 14,000 cases are coming. Cases are coming. Now, all of a sudden, this 56,000, whether you should consider it in your model or you should not consider it in your model, how will you do that? You will consider it because you know it's a data value that is important for a model to be have. Once you have done this, okay, you found out a model which is overfit model. It's too good to go for the generalization. Now you have to reduce that overfitting. How can you do that? You have several methods. First thing is a cross validation. Cross validation happens with the training and the test data split. Okay, validation data split. I'll come to this part in explanation next few slides. Then there is a regularization parameter. Regularization parameter is a lambda kind of small parameter value which regularize your values. Okay, how much you are going to consider, entire feature or part of it, fraction of it. Okay, so some features are important, you may take it directly. For some you may assign a regularization parameter which will regularize how much the contribution of those particular attribute in a possibly I would need a separate session for regularization because it's a very important topic in hyperparameter tuning also. Then let's come to the simple part, removing irrelevant features which are not important. Let's remove them. Okay, let's remove them. So it will reduce the number of features. When you will reduce the number of features, your model will automatically shrink to a better generalization. So that is another possible way of doing it. And the fourth important point is the data augmentation. Now, what is data augmentation? Augmentation data means sometime what happens, your training data is not sufficient. So you have a lesser number of training data, and hence you have your model is completely going par with that particular data set. So augmentation means increase the data set, increase your training data set, add more number of instances in the data set, so that you can look upon why the overfitting can be reduced. So these are 4 methods for reducing the overfitting in the model. So now with this, I'll just quickly move to the cross validation, which is the first part and the third component of my presentation, how to do the validation. So now why validation is important? Your data, your model will always give you 100% accuracy if you will pick up the test data from the given data set only. So this data set was given. This data set already your machine learning model has seen. Your machine learning model, you are making your machine intelligent. Now it is very intelligent. It knows that the data belongs to this particular box. Okay. Now, no matter whatever you pick, you take from this, you see it has seen that this fellow always it has been trained on this, and you take a different combination. And then it is going to have the test data from also this, say, the same data set. So it will always give 100% accuracy. Okay. Now, how to make sure? First of all, 2-3 things are important. I am doing always a static split. Static split, always first 80%. First 80% I have taken. Okay. Remaining 20% is going for my test. So first 80% always be my training data set. The remaining 20% is always going to be my test data set. Okay. That is a wrong thing. So what we are supposed to do for the data validation, we have to separate, we have to take a split of their data set in, let's say just an example, 5-fold we have taken. So 5 parts our data set has been defined, and we have taken 5 different parts as a test data set. Okay, so this is, suppose this is my one training instance. I have divided like 80-20. So this is my 80 is for training, 20 is for test. Okay, then I will go, I have to do it like training, validation and testing, TVT. Okay, this is my inner split. Okay, inside the training I have validate, for the validation purpose it is like testing only. Okay, but in this validation we check the errors. In validation split we check the errors. In the test we actually see the, we don't test our we don't see the error here in the test, we see the class tables directly. So in the validation we check how much errors we are having, and when we change the multiple fold of the validation we try to see when our error is being reduced. Okay, so for each k fold, suppose I'm going to have the k number of times we are going to split it. So for each value we have to perform a cross validation. In the next slide it will be better clear with that image. So what we are going to do, each time when we are considering this training data set has been divided further into the validation set, and in the validation we are again doing the training and the validation. So whatever is the best values, okay, best k values are there, that has to be performed on the test data set. Now let's try to understand it better. This is for your all data. Now you have divided your training data and test data. Okay, now in training data you have to make multiple folds which will be called validation. Okay, and that for that you have to tune your parameter. This is important for hyperparameter tuning. So one side you will have made fold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then you have found out the parameter. Then again you change your fold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and you find out the parameter. Again you take a split 2, you make fold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you find out the parameter. This is what you have to keep on doing for hyperparameter tuning also. Okay, you will keep on doing this thing and you will find out the value of the hyperparameters where you are getting better accuracy. So with that particular values, okay, let's take alpha or lambda. With those values, you are going to have a final evaluation on the test data. If you will do it directly, it will give you either all-time 100% or all-time 0% or possibly very less, value. But the rightly tuning of the parameters can be done through the cross validation, where you have to perform. Here I have taken 5 folds. You can take k fold. So k, in the k fold we call it k fold cross validation. Here we have taken split 1, fold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So see, this is being changed. This fold 1 has become fold 2, fold 3, fold 4, fold 5. So each time it will be split and you will be tuning up your parameters. Ultimately, what the parameters will be tuned up to. So because after that they will stop converging. The parameters will be stop converging. That parameter value you can keep it here for the test data set. This can be further explained by the simple combination. Suppose this is okay. Here you are initially. You have to come here for the lowest generalization error. You have to come to this point. Okay, and you are here somewhere. Okay, because you do not know. Now here, how will you tune up your parameters? You have to find out, you have to come here. How will you come here? You can come here like this also. Okay, so you have to look upon this. Now here you can see a very important point. Once you are in the initial phases, actually this is called the gradient descent. When you are in the initial phases, you have to take a big leap and then gradually you move towards the convergence point. That time you have to slow down the process of the learning so that you should not miss the minima of the curve. This is a minima of the curve. Okay, these folds, what they allow you, they initially they tune up the parameters with the large difference. Then gradually when you will keep on moving to the more number of splits, you will see that this convergence will keep on happening. This convergence will gradually slow down and it will be having very, very low values, negligible difference. Once it is reached to the negligible difference, which you can decide upon 3 decimal values, 5 decimal values, you can stop and you can tune up your parameter to that particular value. With that value, you can perform the testing on your model and you will get a better accuracy. So this is what the cross validation is. See, one more. So in each iteration, you are going to have k folds. Okay, you can perform number of iterations. Here we have seen k iterations of k fold on the training data set, and finally you can tune up the values to get the test data set there. So this is the cross validation where the simple each time the your test instances must be randomly shuffled, and then the folds must be decided, and you should perform number of iterations to make sure your model is not learning straight away. It is absolutely, it should be compliable with the unseen data also, or with the test data also. Another kind of cross validation is your leave one out cross validation. It's very simple. Suppose you have taken k number of instances. Okay, so each time you have to leave one. Each time you have to leave one instance for the validation. Remaining k minus 1 will be used for the training. So this time you see in the model 1 you have left first one, and remaining k minus 1 have been considered for the training. Second time you leave the second one, and the remaining this plus this you take them for consideration. So leave one out. It is a slow one. Okay, it is a slow process, but each time it will give you, so the convergence will be, it will keep on validation. The validation will happen slowly, but it will give you good accuracy. Yes, if there are a number of instances, the process is quite slower. So leave and out cross validation is also there. Okay, so these are the basically we use. Then there are a number of techniques like sampling, the stratified sampling. There are a number of things, okay, which is not the part of this particular presentation. Now we will discuss another important problem. Another important problem which comes and which is a hot topic here now in if you talk about the machine learning research. If you are a researcher and or if you are a teacher or faculty, and if you're looking for the area in which machine learning is progressing slow. See, I'm not saying fast. I'm saying it is progressing slow. That is a imbalance problem, class imbalance problem, or you can say the biased machine learning algorithms. Why do we have a biased algorithms or biased models? You know, what is the main reason behind the biased models? The main reason behind the biased model is the inaccuracy in the data itself. Okay. Or now how that data can be inaccurate? I will tell you very simple example. Again, just forget about all the mathematics we have discussed. Yes? Any question? Okay, okay, let's try to understand class imbalance problem. Suppose in your organization, there are lots of people who are working from your own state. Let's say you are from XYZ state, and your 90% of faculty or people belong to XYZ state. Okay, and that database is with you. Okay, that database you are having. Now, if I ask you, there is a person who is coming from ABC state, and absolutely there is no person in your organization is working who belongs to ABC state. Now I ask you, please devise a model and let me know with a person who is coming from ABC state has what kind of probability or you know, what are the chances that he will be taken by your organization. Now you are not doing it. Okay, remember, human brain is not involved here, machine brain is involved. So what machine will do? Machine will do a simple calculation. This is my training data. This is my test data. This is my training data. And this is my test data. Now training data is from which state? XYZ state. This is my home state. Test data is ABC. Now please tell me, just now we have talked about the data validation. Please tell me, on the training data, model has not been trained to have ABC in your organization. So what kind of result model will give? What kind of result model will give? ABC should be taken, or ABC has no chances to be in organization, let's say organization alpha. See, we are not going to decide upon, okay, who is going to decide? Your machine is going to decide. What data machine has seen? Machine has seen data XYZ. If it has seen XYZ data, obviously it will decide only on the XYZ data. So my class label says that these are my feature name, address, date of birth, organization code, okay, UG, PG, PhD, from where. And every time it is say that it is belonging to XYZ, class label which is belong to state XYZ. Now, on this training data, absolutely it will give no chance of getting into alpha organization. Why this problem has happened? Why this problem has happened? This is happening too much. You know, we have a data, we start working on it, but we never see the data is biased or data is not biased. It is a biased data. Biased data because we have not enough number of instances where other states people have been included in this training data set. If it has not been included, the model will always give you wrong results because it has not seen that kind of data. So the class imbalance problems is a problem where it is seen that standard learning process is biased towards the majority class. The training instances where if we talk about the 10,000 data, so it will be biased towards the 9,000 data, which is having the same class label, instead of the remaining 1,000 have no place because they do not have enough number. The sufficient number of instances, sufficient instances are not available. Okay, so the classifier, what does it do? It attempts to reduce global quantities, such as the error rate, not taking the data distribution into consideration. Simple, very simple to see. The normal distribution curve says it goes like this, where you see the mean is going to be 0 from both the side. Okay, now let's talk about this kind of data. This kind of data, what kind of curve you are going to see? What kind of curve you will see? What is this? This is not a Gaussian curve. This is not a Gaussian distribution. One thing, what we assume in machine learning, that data is in the data set, the instances or the records or whatever your data points are, they are normally distributed. Okay, we have separate theories for the other distribution curve, but usually in almost all the learning algorithms, we assume that data is normally distributed. Anytime when the data is not normally distributed, okay, data is not normally distributed, we will have the problem of the inaccuracy or the wrong answers or the incorrect models. This is known as a class imbalance problem. Overwhelming classes are well classified because we have more number of instances to consider, but the minority classes, which possibly the data is not available, okay, they are misclassified. Misclassified means for that the model always gives the wrong prediction, which is not correct. So we have to address this particular problem. Again, you can understand like, okay, I think now you would have understood this. So on a simple front, you can think of, if there are positive examples in the 1,000 data set, if there are 600 positive examples, 400 has to be negative examples. You cannot make it like 800 positive examples, 200 negative examples. Very much possible that randomly when you will pick up or you will shuffle, you will find out all positive instances in the training and all negative instances in the test data set. What will happen? The problem will happen. All accuracies, the model will be wrong. It will be giving a wrong results. Okay. There are many domains in which we have found out a balanced data. Next time when you will be creating a model or when you will be looking for, such kind of problems, you may always look upon the class labels, how many. That's why we always do that also, na? How many class labels are there, 0 or 1 or 2. Detection of oil spills, detection of fraudulent telephone calls, detection of spam mails. Okay, many time, because many time you receive spam mails are hardly rare, few, one or few, or fraudulent telephone calls. Okay, so they are very less in numbers, and most of the time they are there are genuine calls only from the mobile numbers. So that happens, the class imbalance problem. So they are also allowed in DND, thinking that they might be genuine, but actually they are fraudulent. Similar for the spam mails also, because somebody has written account, somebody has written the very, very important parameters like interview, recruitment. So you think of, your system think of, obviously not you, that it is a very important mail, but what happens? It becomes a spam mail, and their mailboxes, or their mail addresses are also designed like that. So that is a class imbalance problem. So now, how to deal with the class imbalance problem? So first of all, resampling, where we have to pick up the whatever you are choosing in the training. You should have a proper ratio between the all the class labels. You cannot take one side, one model, one class label, the other side, another class label. Reweighing. Okay, reweighing means the parameters must be reweighed, and the different weights must be assigned. Then probabilistic estimate between 80-20, you cannot take it like that. So you will have to either reduce or either increase. And then there is a problem like a one class learning. So one class learning, usually you would have seen in the KNN classifier, where instead of k is equals to 1, you should think of a number. You should think of the number where you can increase the number of classes. So instead of putting it like your test instance is this, and because this is nearby, I am going to learn from it, it might be wrong. Okay, it might be possible that there are 3, 4, there are other classes which are nearby. This could be an anomaly also. In this case, we should consider the training instances, the dot, as the triangle bed, not the cross one, because it is a, if I will take k is equals to 1, it will belong to cross. But if I will take k is equals to 3, it will belong to class triangle. So one class learning, that another, we can improve upon class imbalance. Let me see. Yeah, I don't have slides. I have just tried to, because it was just 1 hour 15 minute session. I try to keep it very less concise. Okay, now if organizers will permit me, I would like to share my Colab book so that I can demonstrate at least a few things, and then we can start the QA session.
Definitely, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So let me again go to my Colab book. Okay, I think all of you can see my Colab book.
Yes, madam.
Okay, so here I have taken the IRIS data set. Okay, IRIS data set, which is a very simple data set, and it has just 4 values: petal length, petal width, sepal width, and all of them are giving in the centimeters. Okay, so we have loaded that data set. So this is related to the data exploration. So how to, you can see, how can you see the different fields of it? Okay, and how can you load the data set? So first of all, I have loaded the IRIS data set and try to print the keys of the IRIS data set. So what are the different keys? Okay, this is a dict key dictionary, from keys from the dictionary. You can see in the, as per the Python code, we have talked, what the data is there, target variable is there, target name is there, description is there, feature names are there, and file name is there. Okay. And then if we talk about the description of the IRIS dataset, what we get the how many instances are there and how many attributes are there. So remember, in IRIS dataset, we have 3 kinds of classes. Okay, and in each of these 3 classes, we have 50 instances. So total number of data instances are 150, and each instance is described by 4 attributes. These 4 attributes are numeric in nature. Okay, numeric in nature. So if we try to print the target names, what are these 3 classes? If we try to print it, so we can always print it with the target names, and we can see it is a Setosa, Versicolor, or Virginica. Okay, these are the three class labels which are presented in the iris dataset. We can always print the target names. We can always print the feature names also. So what are the feature names? 4 features which are present in the iris dataset, that is sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width. Okay, so this can be printed. So this is all the part of the exploration of data. Once the data is loaded, okay, what are the different things you should look upon? Okay. What is the type of the data? So the type of iris data is a NumPy. It belongs to the class NumPy, multiple dimensional array. What is the shape of the data? The shape of the data is the 150 instances, that is becomes your row, and 4 is your number of features, that becomes your column. You can always print upon the first 5 columns, first 10 columns, and you can also print all the 150 columns also. You can present, okay, and it will show you the results. So let me put it as so these 5 values, 4 values, feature 1, feature 2, feature 3, feature 4, 15 values are presented. We may also print upon the entire data set 151. Okay. Okay, then the class of target, type of target class, that can also be printed. What is the shape of the target? So how many values there? 150 values are there. Okay. Then you can also print the only class labels. Here you can look upon this kind of analysis will tell you whether your class is balanced or it is imbalanced. If you see here, it is exactly 50, 50, 50 in iris dataset. So we have found out that the class is perfectly balanced. But if you have a data set and you want to see whether it is imbalanced or balanced, you can just print the target and you can see whether it belongs to one class only or it is belonging to the 80% is from class label 1 and only 20% class label 2. So that can also be seen. Okay, then let's talk about the training and testing data. So training and testing data, where usually it is 80, 75 and 25%, okay, which is done here. And you can always look upon the train. X is your attribute set, y is your it is normal, like fx of is equals to y, okay, your predicted one. So the class label will be y and x is your instances which are present in the data set. So training shape and the class labels have been given. So the training data set is having 112 rows and 4 columns as features, and the class labels have been given as 112 class labels have been given. And if you talk about the test data shape, so you can also see that the test shape is 38 instances have been put up as, and it is randomly generated. Okay, so each time it will be randomly generated, it will be changed. So 38 instances have been put up as your test data instances, and the class labels are also 38. Okay, then there are visualization tools also from which you can visualize the scatter plot. For that you have to have your matplotlib and your Seaborn library with you. You can import it and you can do it. Okay, so the simple exploration I have shown, not very transformation principal, possibly some other time or in some other FTP. I would certainly love to talk about the data transformation using principal component analysis or something. Data augmentation also. So these are the things now I think only 10 minutes are left. So I would just quickly go back to my presentation slide. So now only 10-12 minutes are there. So I would like to have questions. If you have any, please let me know. And you can always write to me on shakti.mishra@sot.pdpu.ac.in. Otherwise, if you have any queries, please, I will be very happy to answer it.
Madam, in that validation.
Yes.
Yeah. So you said out of that training part, we'll start validating and identify the parameters you
Right.
said. So can you elaborate upon that, madam?
Okay. See, what happens in the hyperparameter tuning, what happens, or any parameter tuning, if you will train on the static data, okay, if you will not reshuffle the data, what will happen each time it will you have set up a value, okay, because just a minute. So when you are validating the data, you have picked up 80 and 20, let's say, or 75 or 25. Now you have generated some, with this, you have generated some values of parameters, let's say 0.9. Okay, in this sequence, because the correlation, now this is the, when you will take a multiple fold. Okay, when you take a multiple fold, because the data values will be changed, this alpha might be changed to 0.7. So if you will not perform multiple folds validation on validation data set, the values of alpha will always be static and your model accuracy might go wrong. Okay, because we have not completed our process of training and testing on the complete instances. It is just on the static part. But if you will take multiple shuffles, multiple components, multiple parts of the same data, and you will train your model differently, possibly the values which you will get towards the end, they will be the value which are generated after seeing the entire data set or after being trained on the entire data set. So they are more prone to, or they are more closer to the actual results, I should say. Okay, so not results, but yes, they should give you actual values nearer, or generalization error. They should make a generalization error very low. So that's why the validation is having, I don't have much time, but yes, I would certainly, because in deep neural network, it is quietly can be elaborated in a very good and a simple manner, how this multiple iterations help you in setting up the hyperparameters to the value which is closer to the actual value. So that's another thing. And here, if you look upon, let's see, here my point is here. Okay. And you are somewhere here. Somewhere
Madam,
here.
Now you
Now
are not in the presentation mode. We are not able to see anything.
Okay. Just a minute. Is it visible now?
No.
Is it visible now?
No, it is not shared. It is not shared.
Now it is visible?
Yes.
So now during the model training, when we are training our model, the parameters which are learned, okay? So we cannot, because once we start iteration number 1, we take random value of alpha, okay? Iteration 1, we set up alpha is equals to suppose 0.3. But that all depends on the further accuracy and accuracy. We try to set up this value alpha. We either try to increase it or decrease it. Okay, for that also we have a parameter from J theta equation. We can write it. So this will keep on, iteration will keep on going until we see there are no changes or very negligible changes to the alpha. That's why the iterations are important. Iterations are important. And once this value is stabilized, let's say it is stabilized to 0. It might be 0.3. Next time it might be 0.2. Next time it might be 0.15. Then 1.4, 1.3. So, then ultimately we see it's just a 0.001% difference or 0.002 that we can always set upon. We can stop the iterative process and we can freeze the value of the hyperparameter. And that hyperparameter will take you towards the, the accurate model, because it will closer to the minimum of the curve, But if you will keep on increasing it, or if you will randomly keep on putting it, your model may miss the convergence point. It may go from here to here, which will certainly be missing that. But our objective is not like this. Our objective is to go in a fashion that we should not miss to the minimum point anyhow. So that's why the iterations are important. If we will do only one iteration, possibly we will certainly going to miss it. Any other question?
Yeah, madam, one more question. Say, let us say I have 100 data and 75 I've used for training and another 25 I've used for testing. So I have an accuracy, say something like 95%. My doubt is, something which is not there in this 100%, fresh data I bring. For that also, it should give the same accuracy. How is that this testing is done only on this 25% or something other than this also, outside this also?
No, see, testing cannot be. Testing is always on the unseen data only. initially you perform a validation on the present data. Okay, when you test the data, you will have to put up the unseen data so that you can look upon the accuracy of the model. Now things depend upon that if your unseen data is how you are putting up the unseen data and how closely your the features value and the other values are related to this model, that all depends upon. But the thing is that when you are bringing the unseen data into the picture, that all depends how much your model is trained. That's why we say the training data should be large enough, and it should also contain almost all the possible class labels and almost all the possible features value dimensions. Okay, so that it can predict rightly. Otherwise, if the training data is less, model will suffer from the problem.
Correct.
That is another thing. Should I don't know whether I was able to answer your question or not, or it is something that you are looking for.
No, correct, madam. Thank you.
Okay, so we can have a yes.
Yeah, I have a question. In the first session, initially we saw one credit card, data. So there, out of 280,000, instances, out of those only 490 roughly were the fraudulent cases. So in this case, certainly it is visible that the class is imbalanced.
Right.
So, so in this case, what could be done really? I mean, because we don't have separate data, we have only this limitation. So what to do? Because in this case, ideally the Setosa, all this thing, this IRIS data set is ideally divided into 50 instances of each class.
Exactly.
So that's not the real case. So what to do then?
Exactly. Okay, so whenever you are having, see, this is for the last slide. So when you are having such kind of data set, when you are having one class is too much in number that it is actually overpowering the another class, which is minority in nature, you should do the resampling. You should pick up the sampling from your actual data set so that it can identify equal numbers or almost equal numbers of training and test data set. Okay, or both the classes, I should say, not training and test, both the classes, class label 1 and 2. So 28,000 and 1,000. If you see, almost all the spam mails or fraudulent mails will be considered as genuine mail, because the 20,000 number instances are overpowering the other one. So you should do the resampling, I think. And in the sampling also, we have different kinds of strategies, how you can resample it. Okay, so that's another topic where we can talk about. Or you should do adjust the probability estimate, like how much you are going to pick up from your 28,000 and how many you are going to pick up from your test data. Obviously, there is one problem that you cannot go ahead with the actual data set. You have to do the remodeling or sampling of the data set you have to do. There is no other option.
Yeah, quite the difficult, exercises on that part, isn't it? I mean, before forming a model, the difficult part is really lying there.
Exactly. That's a very genuine problem, and I think very recently people have come across this thing that the class imbalance is creating a lots of model inaccuracies. So yes, I think there are lots of methods for it also, and I think there is consistent research is also going on in that particular area. So how to handle with a skewed data set.
Madam?
Yes.
Let us say I don't have any domain knowledge at all.
Which knowledge? Domain knowledge.
Domain knowledge. I don't have any domain knowledge. And I am available with, let us say, 5 columns of my features, and the 6th column is my class, the dependent thing. Now, let us say if I need to set a priority that, let us say, 2nd column will be my first priority, I will take care of, means it is correlating with my. So is there any method to do such kind of thing without any domain knowledge?
See, priorities can be only set up in machine learning. It can be set by tuning up your weight parameter. Okay, so when you are saying that your second feature is more important in your model.
But when we are assigning the weights, we should have domain knowledge that this parameter should be given this much weight and that parameter should be given that much weight. But let us say I don't have a domain knowledge. So how can I assign weights? Should I assign equally to all the things? No, that will not work out.
Yes. So initially all the features have been assigned. When you don't have domain knowledge, you do that. Then your model suffers from underfitting. And then you try to improve your model. You know, that's a normal theory. In machine learning, actually, we start with that only. Initially, we think that there is absolutely no domain knowledge, and henceforth all the attributes are equally important. And let's assign one weight to all the attributes, right? And then you see your model and you compute your accuracy or you compute your error, and then you find out your error is too high. Then you try to tune up that weight, okay, depending upon different. So that's how the domain knowledge also earns, you get your domain knowledge, and gradually it is built by reshuffling and reassigning the weight parameter. All models work on the same theory, the same, either it is deep neural network or reinforcement learning or transfer learning. All models in machine learning works on the same concept. Initially zero knowledge, gradually it will learn from the prior experience and it will keep on increasing and tuning the values.
One more question, ma'am. Can deep learning help out in this?
See, deep learning, we try to understand one thing. Deep learning is obviously across globe, it has been considered a very well proven method of and very high accuracy. It gives very high accuracy in almost all the possible applications. But the kind of application we are working, the kind of problem, it adds complexity also. Deep neural network adds complexity also. So yes, deep neural network 100 certainly going to help. Okay, because there you have number of parameters which can adjust upon and which can be computed by itself. But we have to look upon the problem first, and then we should decide that whether that much complexity is required or it can be solved using simple methods also.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question?
Okay, ma'am, I don't think the participants may have any questions. So thank you very much, ma'am, for such a wonderful and knowledge-rich session. Thank you once again, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for invitation. Thank you everyone for patiently listening to me. Thank you.
Now, can you share your email ID and all in chat?
Okay, I'll do that. Just a minute. Can I write on the chat box? Oh, yes. So you can contact me. This is my mail ID. I would be happy. If you have any queries later on also, please let me know.